One of our viewers asked this question: how much income will I need for retirement? We're going to discuss this question and much more, so stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching. This is Richard with Wisdom Investor. We're going to talk about this subject here today: how much income you need for retirement. Right now there's about 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day, they say. If you're in your 40s and 50s, you still have time to make some adjustments on how much income that you're going to need to cover your expenses. So we're going to look at a simple approach here today, some simple math that anybody can do without any calculators or software, things like that. So we're going to take a look at an easy way to calculate this here today. So there's basically about 4 areas that a person needs to be thinking with. One is, what is your expense? Just do some basic math. You're going to have to sit down and just look at what your costs are to live. And then what is your income that you have coming in right now? And also we're going to have to project what you think your income is going to be. Now, part of this income is going to be based on saving. If you're in your 40s and 50s, you still have time to save money. Now, if you're close to your 60s or even mid-60s, that number is going to be difficult to change. The amount of savings that you grow by the time you get to your 60s is going to be difficult to change. But if you're in your 40s and 50s, you still have a chance to add to your savings. And then, of course, how long you're going to live in retirement. They say once you get to be 65, you're going to live at least 20 more years, okay? And then we talked a little bit about the savings element of this. So what is considered expenses here? So let's just take a look here at some basic items that you want to calculate here for yourself. Keep in mind, everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. Housing costs. Are you paying a mortgage or do you have your house paid for? You really want to shoot for getting your house paid for by the time you get into your 60s. Food cost is another high area of expenses in retirement. Health, and we're talking about health insurance, and if you have any doctor bills, prescriptions, things like that, that can be extremely expensive. Transportation costs. Are you still paying for your car, or is it paid for? Are you making a monthly payment, or is it all paid for? And then something I don't have listed here, you want to have a savings set aside for emergency. If you own a house, there's always going to be situations where the roof needs to be repaired. Maybe you need to paint the house. So we want to have money set aside for emergency. We're going to take a look at some basic expenses that globalbankingrates.com calculated from Alabama to Wyoming. We're going to look at the cost of living across America. To give us an idea of expenses, we're going to look at some states here and what some of these figures are. We're going to start with the low end of the scale first. Mississippi here. Total annual expenditures, $51,734. That's what they're calculating here as a total expenses to live in Mississippi. That's going to include groceries, housing, utilities, transportation, health care, and miscellaneous. The next state that was listed here, we're not going to go through every one of these. I'm just kind of give you some averages here. Oklahoma, total expenditures $52,714. Here's a couple of more states. This is on the low end here. Arkansas, $53,204 on an annual basis, and then we have Kansas at $53,510. So let's look at the middle of the range here. Utah here, they have it $58,897 per year to live, and then South Dakota at $59,081. Also in the mid-range here, we have North Dakota at $59,142 and Florida at $60,244. And just to give you a reference on the high end, New York, $82,652, and then we have Oregon at $83,877. And then on the high end, at the very highest, California at $85,591 per year to live, and then Hawaii at the top of $123,244. So that gives you an idea here, some of the costs of living from a survey. Now, what's going to change here for each individual person, one is your housing. Do you have your housing paid for? That's going to help you get that number lower. It's very important. Also, do you have your car paid for? So those are two big expenses that a person does have some type of control over. If we look at a cost of living index here nationwide, the area in the green, generally speaking, is less expensive to live in. And then the areas in the darker red and orange are more expensive. So you can see the West Coast, more expensive to live in. And then we have the Northeast as more expensive. The reason we're looking at this is a lot of folks, as they get into their retirement years, they're looking for areas to live that are lower in expenses. So if you're on the West Coast here, and we're seeing that today, a lot of people are migrating out of California into some of these other western states, including Texas and other areas. So we're going to run through an example here. As we said a minute ago, you want to know what your expenses are and try to estimate what your income is. We're going to take a look at some estimates on income based on this particular scenario. So here's an example here we're going to come up with. This is a situation where the person's expenses are $50,000 per year. Okay, so this is real basic, but we're going to take that and divide that by 12 months. That gives us a need of $4,166 per month for expenses. Now we could reduce that by getting the housing costs down or get some of our transportation costs down. So in this scenario, we estimated the expenses at $50,000 per year. So let's take a look at the income side. Where is income going to come from? It could come from savings, Social Security. If you qualify for Social Security, maybe you have a pension at your work, or it could be other, it could be alimony, it could be other income that's coming in from maybe work, part-time work, things like that. So after we sit down and take a look at where our income is going to come from, we're going to finish this scenario here. And in this particular case, we're going to say that the Social Security income is $1,500 per month for one spouse and $2,000 per month for the other spouse. That comes to $3,500 per month. If you multiply that by 12, that's $42,000. So you can see that Social Security alone would not cover the expenses in this case because our expenses are $50,000. However, this particular couple had a savings of $300,000. Now, at that $300,000, it might be invested in dividend stocks, and maybe you're receiving income or dividends from that money, or maybe you're going to do some type of withdrawal over a period of time on that money. Let's talk a little bit about withdrawing here. So in this scenario here, we talked about the savings is $300,000. A general rule to use, you're going to withdraw 4% per year. So if you take this $300,000 times 4%, that means you could withdraw $12,000 per year, and that money would last approximately 25 years. Now, a lot of that's going to depend on how it's invested and whether there's any other monies taken out for emergency, things along those lines. Another scenario along with this $300,000, maybe you're earning dividends with this. You have an average dividends on all your investments here of 4%. That would also give you $12,000 per year. Now this 4% rule is a pretty good number to use. Some people say it may be too aggressive. You could say take out 3%. Generally speaking, if you're made it to 65, you're going to live about 20 more years. Now you could live longer. Scary thing is here, you don't want to outlive your money. Okay, now nice thing with Social Security, you do get a cost of living increase on that, so that can grow somewhat. It's really important that you take out the right amount of money each year so that you can make this last. And generally speaking, the 4% rule is a good number to at least sit down and do some calculations with. Okay, so we've looked at expenses. Our expenses in this scenario is going to be $50,000 per year. And then we also looked at where income could come from. Again, everyone's situation is going to be different, You have to sit down and do a budget and take a look at where your expenses and income is going to come from. If you're in your 40s, you're not going to know that quite yet, but you can start getting some ideas. You can also be looking at where you're going to save more money so you can develop a nest egg for the future. If you're in your 50s, get a better idea of where the expenses are going to come from, and you've got an idea of what your savings is looking like. And you still have time to build the savings. Let's look at this scenario here. We said that $50,000 was in expenses, and then the two together on Social Security was $42,000. Income from either savings from dividends of $12,000 or withdrawals of $12,000 per year. That totals $56,000. The $56,000 income would cover the $50,000 in expenses. Now, one thing we didn't add in here was taxes, so that could increase the expenses just a little bit. Now, if you're looking at your particular situation and you're saying, this doesn't add up, what are some things that you could do? Well, one, instead of retiring at 62, you may want to retire at your full retirement age. That's either going to be age 66 or 67. If you're born after 1960, that would be age 67. So if you wait till 67, you'll receive a higher amount on your Social Security. You also may want to start saving more so you can build up your savings if you find that this scenario is not going to work out for you. So those are a couple of things. And then, of course, if you're in your 60s and things aren't quite working out as far as having enough income versus expenses, you could also get some type of a part-time job. I want to thank you for watching here today. If you have any questions, leave a comment.